Hi everyone, Katie from Just Another Girl in Her Books here, and today I will be reading to you the first chapter from Touchscreen from the Sensations collection by L.B. Dunbar. Under the Moonlight, Take 1. As I looked out the French doors at the bright sunlight and the blue waters of Lake Michigan, I daydreamed. It was summertime in northern Michigan, and I smiled to myself. Summer brought back memories of time spent in that cool water, days in that warm sunshine, and nights under yellow moonlight. Summer also brought back memories of her. She'd left me long ago, or rather I'd let her go. It wasn't like it was yesterday. It was years ago. 7, but who was keeping track? Either way, she was gone from my life, but not from my memories. The informative speaker rambled on from the podium, and I shifted in the banquet chair. It was warm inside the Bay Cove Convention Center. The heat index had been 100 degrees the day before, and it was predicted to be just as warm today. The sun's rays against the 3 large glass doors increased the temperature of the room, and even the speaker had beads of sweat on his forehead. I continued to stare out the window. I fiddled with my name tag absent-mindedly. Gavin Scott, Director, UCLA, it read. I knew I should be concentrating, listening. This was where I had longed to be. It was a gathering of all the film directors showcasing at the Traverse City Film Festival. I found it ironic that I went all the way to California to study film production and direction, only to end up back in Michigan, some 30 minutes south of my hometown, to premiere my first film. Elk Rapids was a small town of less than 1,000 people in the northwest region of Lower Michigan. In a small town with big dreams, I'd left the family cherry farm for the great movie metropolis of Los Angeles and film school at UCLA. I was what they called a small fish in a big pond when I first arrived at the university, and my initiation was to discover I had a lot to learn. I refused to let the big city beat me. I was determined I would be successful, and I was. Just 5 years after graduation, I was releasing my first independent film under the financial backing of my girlfriend's father, Zeke Steinman, one of the most successful movie finance company owners in LA. Zoe Steinman was almost everything I'd ever wanted in a girlfriend. Almost. She was Californian royalty from Beverly Hills with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a healthy tan. She was fashionable, high society, and very photogenic. She hardly made a move without someone flashing a camera in her face, and I was often the man on her arm in those photos. Together for 3 years, I knew I was lucky to have Zoe in my life. I glanced around the room, filled with other up-and-coming director wannabes. There were guest speakers from various categories of film study, direction, and production. Film students would be present at some of the seminars as well as amateurs who were just curious about cinema history. But this particular introductory session was for featured film presenters only. It was full of directors, schedules, and menus. A golf outing was planned for the afternoon following a buffet lunch. My tea time was early and the speaker was running late, which meant I would have to skip lunch and head to the course. My stomach was already rumbling from this morning's coffee, and my thoughts continued to wander to the mandatory dinner I had to attend tonight with my parents. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a young woman and a little boy walk under the old outdoor dance pavilion. Located several yards away from the conference room, the cement-based structure was surrounded by sand and covered with a white canvas canopy in a tent-like fashion. I imagined in my director's eye a wooden boardwalk attaching the main floor to the Grand Hotel sidewalks. Soft white bulbs would light the large circular area for resort visitors in an age gone by in their antiquated clothing as they danced a waltz. The woman and the boy seemed like they were here for just that, a little old-fashioned dancing. She was talking to him, pointing to the banquet hall and looking upward to what I assumed was the hotel above. The child started to laugh as she wrapped one little hand in hers and positioned his other hand at her waist. His head was just above her waistline, and he was giggling with a beaming smile as he looked up at her. It was obvious she was leading him around, and his short legs were tangling behind him in a silly manner. Eventually she tickled him under the arm he had wrapped around her waist, and in his laughter she dipped him over one of her arms. I could tell by the expression on the little boy's face that he was laughing hysterically. The woman bent over and kissed the little guy several quick times on his cheek and neck, then pulled him upward. The boy now wanted to dance more, and with stiff legs he twirled the woman around and around. They were oblivious to the convention room full of people just inside the glass doors, and I noticed more than one person was sidetracked by this image of what I assumed was mother and child. I wiped a line of sweat that now dripped down the side of my face with my index finger. I wondered if the air conditioning was even on as I turned from left to right to see that others in the stuffy room also noticed the woman and the boy. I wasn't the only one mesmerized by them outside in the bright sunlight under the white tent-like structure. Other directors seemed dazed by the monotone voice of the speaker and the heat, and I almost laughed out loud at how comatose my colleagues looked. Several near me had now shifted their eyes to watch the blonde-haired beauty twirl and dip her blonde-headed little boy. His dark brown eyes were visible even from this distance, and his little face glowed with dimples. As the speech drew to its conclusion, I saw an opportunity to stand up and walk outside. I felt drawn to this woman and child, and I exited one of the French doors to walk along the pathway under another canopy. The beauty and her boy did not seem to notice me, and I tried to stay behind the columns that supported the overhang, providing shade to this portion of the sidewalk as I peered nonchalantly at the beach. I glanced in their direction enough to notice wisps of her blonde hair around her tan face blowing out of her ponytail. She kept her eyes downward, focused on the boy, but I realized they had the same nose. Again, it seemed safe to assume this was her child. She dipped the boy again, and I heard his strong, childish laughter. It was infectious, and I smiled to myself. The woman kissed the boy again, with several small pecks on his little red cheeks and neck. Only now I could hear the sounds the mother made, loud and exaggerated, with each brush of her lips. The boy laughed harder, saying, "No, no, no!" But he squealed his enjoyment of each kiss and clearly wanted more. She stood him upright again, and the child wrapped his arm around his mother, beginning to dance. "Again!" the child pleaded, but the mother directed him elsewhere. They held hands as they stepped off the dance floor and into the white sand surrounding the pavilion. I hadn't noticed they were both barefoot, and the woman bent down to pick up 2 pairs of shoes. She handed the child his and carried hers through her fingers. There was something strangely familiar about her as she walked across the sand away from me and toward the water line of the lake. I stood straighter now, no longer leaning behind the barrier. I took no more notice of how much warmer I was outside in the blazing morning sun in my gray summer suit as I took a step into the sand, forgetting my leather dress shoes. The woman turned toward the child, walking backwards. Her tan legs were graceful beneath her white shorts. This blonde beauty shielded her eyes as if looking at something behind me. Then she suddenly stopped walking. The child broke free of her hand and started running across the freshly combed beach toward the lake's small white caps. I made my way to the dance floor, the sand slipping under the hard soles of my dress shoes. I balanced on the edge of the cement structure with my heel and kept my gaze focused on her as she continued to stare back at the resort. Slowly, she lowered her hand from her eyes and tucked a piece of wayward hair behind her ears. I realized she was no longer looking behind me, but at me. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear made her instantly recognizable. Britton McKay had returned to northern Michigan, just as I had. And that was the first chapter of Touchscreen by L.B. Dunbar. If you enjoyed this reading, you can one-click a copy for yourself at the link down below. And you can also see my 5-star review of Touchscreen at the link to my blog, also listed below. I hope you enjoyed, and have a great evening.